Last night, I stepped down from Just Democrats. And I'll tell you what, it's really, really simple.
Both Cenk Uygur and Kulinski have left Justice Democrats. Now, Justice Democrats is the progressive wing of the Democratic Party that both Kyle and Cenk started at the beginning of 2016, along with some Bernie campaign or former Bernie Sanders campaign staffers. Now, I'm going to try to give you the full overview of what exactly happened, including quotes from old blog posts from Cenk that kickstarted this entire thing, as well as Cenk's statement on it, Justice Democrat's statement on it, Kyle Kulinski's statements on it, and my own feelings about what happened and how Justice Democrats reacted to it. So, just a full disclosure, I enjoy both TYT and secular talk. So, if that affects your view of how I feel about this topic and my reporting on it, then so be it. But I want to be honest with my viewers that I do enjoy both Kyle and Cenk, and I hope that you can see that I'm going to back up my claims of how I feel about this with substantial information and facts of the story that aren't really being told as clearly as maybe they should be. Now, let's all start with the beginning of what launched this entire thing, and that's the story in the Wrap. So on December 22nd, the Wrap broke with the story, Young Turks founder Cenk Uygur apologizes for ugly, insensitive old blog posts. Now, depending on how long you've watched the Young Turks, you likely know that Cenk Uygur used to be a conservative, and he's talked about it quite a bit, how he held a pro-war rally once, how he voted for George H.W. Bush over Clinton, how he voted for Bob Dole, and then I believe the first Democrat that he actually voted for was Al Gore over George Bush because he couldn't believe how stupid George Bush was. So he's come a long way in his views. And I say this because the blog post that I'm about to quote is from 1999. So about 18 years ago. This is 2 years before even 9/11 and before Cenk ended up voting for Al Gore. So here's a couple quotes of partially of what the Wrap had reported and that some people are freaking out about. I live in Miami now. There are an incredible amount of outrageously hot women here. In fact, there are more beautiful women here than any other city I've ever seen. The only problem is that after seeing these girls every day and not being able to have sex with them, after a while, you begin to lose your mind. Obviously, the genes of women are flawed. They are poorly designed creatures who do not want to have sex nearly as often as needed for the human race to get along peaceably and fruitfully. Now, that's just a quick sampling because there's a lot more to this story that I want to get into. But if you want to read more of these posts, I'm going to have a link in the description. And you could read through various different blog posts that Cenk posted back in the day and get a sense of what people are outraged about. Or I'll also just link to the story in the Wrap so you can read the full context for yourself. Now, this quote specifically, I feel it was tongue-in-cheek. And me knowing, or just as a viewer of the Young Turks over the years, when you know someone's personality, you tend to read their writing like they speak. So Cenk is often self-deprecating. So when he says something like, obviously the genes of women are flawed. They are poorly designed creatures who do not want to have sex nearly as often as needed for the human race to get along peaceably. When I read that, I'm reading it as Cenk is poking fun at himself because he can't get laid. So he's blaming the women for not wanting to have sex with him and saying that their genes are flawed. So I'm reading this as a joke. And even in that context, even if you want to say he's serious about this, that this was completely serious and he was being malicious about it, this is still 1999. And these are just ideas. He's not describing actions. He's not describing sexually abusing or assaulting people or even mentally assaulting anybody. This is stream of consciousness. So I see this as, yeah, slightly offensive, but is it something to have somebody resign over? Now, I don't think so. But let me just give you a little more context of the time around when this was posted. So I found this in another blog post that he wrote, and it gives you an idea of what the purpose of Cenk's blog, as well as the time that this was all occurring in. So in 1999, he's also quoted as saying, "I will hopefully buy a computer this weekend so that I can do this from home, so that I can cut down on the misery of having to do it from work. And I have to stop writing so carefully. If I try to write immaculate articles every day, I will kill myself. I need to write more train of thought bullshit like this. Just as you were thinking, no you don't. I love writing train of thought." So this is a time when Cenk didn't even have his own computer. Now, for people who are young right now, if you're, 18 years old, this may sound crazy to you because you don't remember a time when you didn't have a computer or have the internet. But there was a time back in the day when people didn't have computers. So I just show you that to really give you context of how long ago these blog posts were posted. And the other part of that, how he talks about he wants to do more with his train of thought, or posting more train of thought rather than immaculate essays. Again, it shows you that a lot of these blog posts are about Cenk writing what he's thinking without really trying to build any sort of case for, these blog posts are supposed to be, unfinished. They're supposed to look really rough and dumb and not be proper. He's trying to be provocative in many ways. And in fact, he gets to that in his video statement. He said in relation to this. So this is about a 4-minute long statement. I'm going to post the full thing, but if you've seen it already, then just skip ahead about 4.5 minutes. And the reason I'm showing you all of Cenk's statement is because it really gives you the full context of where Cenk's mind was at that time, but also shows you that he is profusely apologizing for being the person that he once was.
So some of you might have seen some blog posts that I wrote 18 years ago that some people happened to find online. And I'm sure most of you didn't see it, but that's okay. I'm gonna tell you about it anyway. And I know now more people will see it, but that's okay because we learn and we grow on this show, and that's what we try to do together. And boy, back then did I have a lot of learning and growing to do. So some of the stuff that was written on there was totally offensive, insensitive, ignorant. If you read it and go, wow, man, you need to learn a lot, you're absolutely right. So if any of you have already read it, I certainly apologize to the people who were offended by it because you were right to be offended. And it was a young, immature guy back then trying to show how cool he was by being edgy and politically incorrect. Well, what I didn't realize back then, and I think that I've learned throughout these years, is that being politically incorrect sounds fun to you, I guess, when you're a young guy like that, but not everybody sees it the same way. And if you're making jokes about sex as I was, you might see it a little bit differently if you look at it from the perspective of a woman who has been harassed or assaulted. Then you look at it from a completely different perspective, and understandably so. What we've been trying to do on this show for the entirety of its existence is to learn to empathize with one another. And look, it is not an easy process, and I've said probably about 1 million times on this show, the hardest thing in the world is to escape your own perspective. And I wish I could go back to the younger Cenk and explain that to him. And if someone had written this stuff today, I would probably be harsh in criticizing them on air and try to explain that to them. So look, you guys have seen me. This was stuff that I wrote before we started the Young Turks, but you guys have seen me involved with your own eyes on the air on so many different issues. So I debated Mario Cuomo on the Young Turks for about an hour back when we were on Sirius Satellite Radio. I took the position of being pro-death penalty. Well, that turned out to be massively wrong. It turns out at least 4% of the people on death row were innocent. So, boy, if anyone's owed an apology, it's every pro-death penalty person should apologize to the people who are innocent on death row. So look, I can go on and on. In the beginning, I didn't believe in climate change. I had absurd ideas that mold wasn't real. Jesus, how weird is that? And so, as I've told you dozens of times on the air, I held pro-war rallies when I was in college. I've written terrible things in college as well. And And I think and I hope that I've learned a lot from that and grown a little bit. I wish I had grown up a little quicker and learned to empathize with people way earlier than that. I think that I've been on the road to progress and justice for the last 15 years. And again, you guys have seen that. You've seen the movie Mad as Hell, which was a movie about this show. You see my transformation too, from the public access days to the radio days to the online and TV days. And so I'm asking for the people who have read it and were rightfully offended, of course, for your forgiveness, and for all of you, your understanding to some degree. And I hope that we continue to grow together on this show and start to and continue to spread that empathy to everyone involved. And I hope that for those folks, again, who were rightfully offended, that being on the road to progress and justice, never fully arriving, but being on that road is a good thing, and that it's a positive note that we have gone through this journey together. So for all the mistakes that I have made in that journey, and they are plentiful, including those blog posts, of course I apologize. And by the way, I deleted them not yesterday when the news reports came out, but over a dozen years ago. You know why? Because I didn't stand by them. I looked at them and I was like, that is embarrassing. That is totally wrong and inappropriate. So I think and hope again that folks can come to an understanding where they say, I think this guy's getting a little better, and everybody's got a lot of work to do, most especially me. So again, I hope you guys understand that, and that we continue conversations on this show that get us to a place where we see each other's perspectives better and have more empathy towards each other. And I'm certainly trying hard to do that. Thank you for putting up with me for all these years and through this as well.
Now, I think that was a great explanation of how Cenk has changed as a person. And as he said himself, he deleted these posts over 12 years ago. So he already saw that, these blog posts do not properly represent who he was 12 years ago. So he decided to get rid of them. And they have now been dug up, and people who may not be as familiar with Cenk Uygur and his positions and how he's changed over the years may be shocked by them. But if you do, in fact, watch the Young Turks and understand that, people progress as individuals, we evolve and we learn and change, then this apology and explanation makes perfect sense. Now, apparently it wasn't enough for the Justice Democrats group that he started, because they, a day after that rap story, they put out this tweet. We are deeply disturbed by recent news regarding Cenk Uygur and David Kohler. Their language and conduct is horrifying and does not reflect our values at Justice Democrats. We would be hypocrites to not act immediately and ask for their resignation. Here is our official statement. And that statement from Justice Democrats Executive Director Shoykat Chakrabarti and Campaigns Director Alexandra Rojas in part says this. The entire staff and leadership of Justice Democrats was horrified by these posts. After hearing Mr. Uygur's side of the story and talking with our candidates, our staff came to the swift and unanimous decision to demand Cenk Uygur's and David Kohler's immediate resignation from their positions at Justice Democrats. So just quickly, I want to discuss the David Kohler aspect of this, because this video is more focused on Cenk Uygur and Kyle Kulinski, and that's because they are front-facing, or they were front-facing members of Justice Democrats, whereas David Kohler is more behind the scenes. So his departure, I don't think, really has an effect on the public image of Justice Democrats the same way that Cenk's and Kyle's does. But getting back to their the statement here. So Kyle Kulinski put out a statement about a day or two after this statement from Justice Democrats that shows some serious inconsistencies with what actually went on. So I'm going to play that and then make the comparison of what the two sides have said and try to figure out what actually went on.
Now, Cenk handled this in as mature a way as possible, because Cenk said, listen, this isn't about me. This was never about me. This is about the candidates. This is about the policies that they're fighting for. So he offered his resignation. He said, okay, given the reaction that this is causing in the staff, this isn't a hard decision. I will voluntarily resign. And, you guys can keep fighting on, and I'll support you from outside the organization. I didn't have the power or the leadership authority to look at the overwhelming majority of the staff and say, I'm not going to take your concerns to heart, and I'm going to have Cenk stay on. Nor did Cenk say, listen, I don't care, I'm going to override the will of the overwhelming majority of the staff, and I'm going to stay on. So, for this reason of strong differences, strong disagreements with the staff, I'm going to be stepping down from Justice Democrats. It's beyond crucial that each and every one of us still support the candidates, because the candidates had nothing to do with any of this. Every single one of the candidates has my support. They all still support Medicare for all and free college and a living wage and ending the wars and a New Deal and getting money out of politics. And they weren't even involved in this drama or the fallout or the very quick decision making.
Okay, so there are three major inconsistencies between the story that how Justice Democrats is telling it, and how Kyle Kulinski is telling it, and how Cenk is telling it, which I'll show you in a second. Which Cenk's story is consistent with Kyle's story, but Justice Democrats, or I guess in this case, Shoykha Chakrabarty and Alexandra Rojas, the statement they put out is inconsistent with Kyle and Cenk's. So Justice Democrats said the entire staff and leadership was horrified by the posts, but Kyle said he wasn't and is stepping down because of the disagreement. So Kyle was a part of the staff, or he was part of the board, the leadership, and he disagreed with them on thinking that Cenk Uygur should resign. But Justice Democrats is acting like the entire staff and leadership was for Cenk's resignation. So right here shows that Kyle is the one telling the truth, because Justice Democrats are not speaking for Kyle here. So that's the first inconsistency. The second one, Justice Democrats said they demanded Cenk's resignation. Kyle said Cenk offered it. And that's another one that is backed up by Cenk in the next clip that I'm about to play. And then the third one, Justice Democrats said they talked with the candidates about it, but Kyle says the candidates had nothing to do with any of this. So, once again, now, because we know Kyle is telling the truth in the first point, that he disagreed with it, and we know he's telling the truth because he left Justice Democrats because of that, then I'm inclined to believe Kyle in this situation of how things unfolded and what actually went on. Now, here's Cenk's quick statement about him leaving and why he decided to leave the board of Justice Democrats.
Last night, I stepped down from Justice Democrats, and I'll tell you what, it's really, really simple. I love those candidates, and I don't want to cause them any trouble at all. And they're wonderful, uncorrupted, progressive candidates. I want you to support them, but I stepped down from the board. They got it for me. They got 51 candidates. They're fantastic. 2 incumbents, 49 upstarts. A lot of them are poised to win. We want uncorrupted, true progressives to win. Okay, so I'm going to continue to support them in every way that I can. But I just wanted to clarify that, and I don't want anybody to get confused about that. It's from my perspective, it's all good, and I'm going to do everything I can to try to make sure that real progressives win and not corporate establishment Democrats. So, but I'm going to do that from the outside, and I'm not participating on the board anymore.
So there you go. Cenk's story is consistent with Kyle's story, and both of their stories have no venom to them about it. Or at least in Kyle's case, he just disagrees with how the staff and the other members of the leadership reacted to the blog posts. And Cenk openly discussed how he left because he didn't want this to be about him. It was about the candidates. So if he was going to somehow negatively affect the candidates, then he decided to step down to get away from that. Now, this story gets even a little more, I don't know, weird or annoying when Shoykat Chakrabarti tweets an update to his part of the statement, saying this: I wanted to clarify one part of my statement on Cenk Uygur's resignation from the board of Justice Democrats, saying Justice Democrats is not saying no one can ever reform. Cenk has indeed come a long way from where he was 18 years ago. The question is not whether or not Cenk as an individual can grow, it is whether or not Cenk is the right person to lead our organization that puts women's rights and black and brown people's rights at the forefront. No one is entitled to leadership, and we don't believe our leader should be someone who needs reforming on these issues we hold dear. So this is the part where I go, what the hell are you talking about? So this statement says, we don't believe our leader should be someone who needs reforming on these issues. He doesn't need reforming. He's reformed. The posts were 18 years ago. He deleted them 12 years ago. He doesn't agree with them anymore. Aren't people allowed to learn and change and evolve? This doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, to give you another example, the first time I voted for the Conservative Party. And in 2015, I ran as a Green Party MP. But because I voted for the Conservative Party back in 2006, I shouldn't be allowed to be a Green Party candidate, or I shouldn't allowed to be a progressive in a progressive group. Like, this doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, this is where you start to lose people. And you are losing people, especially people on the margins. People like the amazing atheist, also known as TJ Kirk, who tweeted out this: I thought you guys were about getting money out of politics and economic populism. This pandering to the identity politics swing of the left just shows how unserious you are and how empty your ambitions are. I can no longer support you. Not that you ever wanted my support. And this is a guy with over 1 million YouTube subscribers, so he has a massive influence on a lot of people. Now, the reason why the inconsistencies in the Justice Democrat story is so important is because we are supposed to trust this group, the new leadership, who I guess is Shoykat Chakrabarti and Alexandra Rojas. We're supposed to be able to trust these people. Where before, because of the involvement of Cenk Uygur and Kyle Kulinski, a lot of people already had built-in trust from watching those two for over 10 years. So by having their names attached to Justice Democrats, we could actually believe that the Justice Democrats wanted to really, in fact, get money out of politics and push progressive candidates that were actually going to stick to the issues. But when you have the very first statement from the new leadership of the Justice Democrats essentially lying about what happened, then you're losing people. And it's unfortunate because the candidates are the ones that are going to lose most in this. The ones that didn't really have any involvement on what happened here. And many of them did get involved because they were familiar with TYT and Kyle Kulinski. But now you have a group that doesn't really have any clear leadership. And, you know, we hope that the candidates are still going to be free of super PAC money and corporate influence. But without Cenk Uygur and Kyle Kulinski being attached to it, it's hard to really know what the group is going to become and if it will stay the way that it's been so far. Now, even after all of this, Cenk Uygur puts out a tweet that shows just how dedicated he is to the candidates. So after all the backlash that Justice Democrats was receiving for having Cenk Uygur resign, he tweeted, I want everyone to know how hard Justice Dem staff worked to get great progressive candidates. And they're working nonstop to make sure those candidates win and bring us change that's making a difference in people's lives. Hashtag eyes on the prize. So to me, this really shows how unselfish Cenk is being in all of this. Even after Justice Democrats treated him improperly, he's not concerned about that. He's just fully focused on the candidates and getting people elected that are uncorrupted, who are focused on progressive issues. So I do think that is the right way forward. Even if you are angry with Justice Democrats and how they handled this, like I am, I don't think the candidates should be negatively impacted by that, as long as the group itself remains free from super PACs and corporate donations. So as long as that is consistent, then you can donate to the candidates individually. You don't have to give to the Justice Democrats group. But if there's a candidate, especially if it's in your district or state, that you want to support, then support them. And don't let all this drama cloud your judgment on that. Now, I think it's important as progressives that we recognize people evolve and change. Whether you agree with them or not, recognize that people change. And once they're changed, once they have changed, once they learned, then there's no reason to harp on past opinions that they may have held. And if we actually want to win in the battle of ideas, then we have to get the stick out of our ass.